Thanks. So today, I think this will carry on quite well from what Lauren's just been discussing. I'm here to discuss honesty, how to create honest organizations. Now, I'm normally quite a chirpy guy, but today you're going to see two sides to me. If this works. I don't feel awkward. You're going to see the ranty side of me for a while. All my slides will be black. And then you'll see the slightly happier side of me. I promise that's the real me most of the time. But he won't turn up for another 15 minutes. So you're going to have to deal with the slightly grumpy dude first. Before we start, though, I'd love you to all grab your phones. Can you all lift your phones up for me? All right, and now I'm just going to take 30 seconds, just individually on your own. I'd like you to look through every notification that you have on your phone. Just read through what's on there. So grab your phone and just look through the notifications. I've got a podcast one. My wife just spent some money somewhere. This is true. Someone liked a picture of mine. I've received a text. Just look through what you've got on your phone. Okay? If you don't have any, go and just look your last 10 texts on WhatsApp or something. Just scroll through. Okay. So now I'd like you to take your phone, lock it, and I'd like you to just put it on your leg, face up, with the screen facing you. Okay? Now, out of respect, I would love you to not check your phone for the whole session, please. Of course, it's your choice, though. You're free to do what you want, but I just ask that you try to not check it. That way, we've done the phone checking for the session. Now, I say you're free to choose. Freedom is like the topic that seems to go through all my work. I've written a book on the future of democracy and the degree to which we live in a democracy today, or maybe not. The future of work, I believe, is a journey towards increased freedom in the workplace. And I think schools, I could rant about that for quite some time before arriving at any good definition of freedom in schools. So freedom is like the thing that seems to trigger me. It's the thing that both makes me dark and bright in equal measure, depending on the situation. And I want to tell you, you may have heard of this. It's an old ad campaign from the 1920s called Torches of Freedom. So it was during the women's liberation movement. The tobacco industry had a big problem, which was that it wasn't cool for women to smoke. So they got a PR expert called Edward Bernays, who was the nephew of Sigmund Freud, and he learned a lot from his uncle. So he had a campaign called Torches of Freedom, and he said to women, you are free, and you should celebrate that by standing like the Statue of Liberty, holding a cigarette in your hand. And you should show your freedom. And this is an advert. That women are free and ancient prejudice has been removed. Is it the prejudice of women's liberation or the prejudice of women can't buy Lucky Strike? Very quickly, a huge number of women started smoking. It became acceptable for them to smoke. The questions I'm asking myself is, to what degree are we free? And assuming perhaps not as much as we tend to think we are, what can we do about that? And the argument I'm going to make today is that thing that you held up a minute ago is the Torches of Freedom of 2018. That's the cigarette pack that you just held up. First, I'll tell you a little story. You've probably guessed what it is. You've probably heard enough about this, so I'll just tell my personal story, which is that around the time of Brexit, I've never been politically active. I voted, because you're supposed to, but I never really participated, certainly not emotionally. And during Brexit, I posted things like this on the internet. I really cared about the Remain campaign. I really, really cared, unusually for me, okay? So I was really passionate about it, and I would post things that only an arsehole could post. on the internet. I would post these long rants around if you don't agree with my point of view on the world, you're simply wrong. That's what I'm telling everybody here. And when I read back through it, I don't agree with everything I wrote. Then I retweeted this guy. Age breakdown on Brexit polls tells the underlying story. An older generation has voted for a future young people don't want. So the argument this guy is making is that older people have voted for a future young people don't want. I retweeted him. I agreed with him. I just totally disagree with former me. I disagree with past John. No matter your age, you should have a say. So I don't agree with the thing that I thought, but at the time I did think it. And I'm wondering, was it me that thought that? Did I think the thing that I thought I thought? So my question to myself is, was I hacked? And who hacked me? Okay, so the top 10 wealthiest companies in the world, 6 of them are the big tech companies. You'll notice that Google gets 2 slots in the top 10. They're all bigger or within the top 30 countries in the world in terms of financial power. If you were to compare a country to a tech company, you'd be talking about the biggest countries in the world. So this financial power is incredibly worrying. It's existed before, and I think it's the tip of the iceberg in terms of the power that they have. But it's power. And they're obsessed with growth. You'll always hear talk of growth. Now, of course, the talk of growth is also a cultural thing. It's not all their fault. You even have memes. Have you ever heard of exponential growth, the hockey puck, the hockey stick effect? That's like the thing that all the startups want, right? They want the hockey stick. It's a meme in culture. It's not a law of nature. It's simply a cultural mechanism that we always want it to go like that. And so this is something that is a part of the culture behind these companies. And it's culture in general. I recommend you research like a dip in GDP or growth slows down or something like that. And what you'll find is so many articles that say that, for instance, Google's revenue has dropped, the growth has dropped to single figures. So they're not slowing down, they're not getting smaller, they're still getting bigger. They're just getting bigger slower, and that's bad news. Do you see what I mean? They're getting bigger, just slower than before, and that's bad news. This is a huge amount of money. This is a big increase to us. But to them, stuff's slowing down a bit. So I want to ask, how do we grow? How do these companies grow? What's the mechanism? And I'm going to bring in a few theorists who I think have put this pretty well. And I've built a playlist of a lot of their research. So, if I'm allowed to, I've been hacked. Thanks. The first thing to look at is their business models. How do these platforms work? Let's take Facebook. The way the platform works is that they make money from ads, right? We all know that. You go onto Facebook, there's ads. Sometimes you notice their ads, sometimes you don't notice their ads, but they're making money from ads, yeah? The second thing they do is that when you go to watch an ad, you behave in a certain way. You like stuff, your mouse moves towards things, you scroll, you click on some people, you don't click on others. And they take that data, all of your behavior, and let's be clear, this is your behavior. This isn't just numbers. This is really you, the real you. And then they sell that to companies, who sell it to ad companies, who give you more ads. So basically, eyeballs and likes. That's where the money comes from, okay? They make money twice. It's a really great business model. And because of that, they get to feed the machine. Because you're spending so much time with them, the machine gets smarter, right? It's learning about you. And in fact, it's learning to learn about you, which is like a kind of exponential situation of intelligence. So someone on my podcast recently, a chaos theorist, said millions of us volunteer for Facebook for free. This isn't a joke, it's not a cute thing, it's true. We're all making Facebook cleverer all the time, for free. In fact, not for free, we're paying, because we give our data. So that's really nice. Well done. So this is the business model that starts to happen. We give ads, data, machine learning, and what they're measuring, a guy called Tristan Harris puts forward, is they're constantly measuring time on site. The thing that they care about is you spending time on the site. The more time you spend there, the more ads, the more data, the more ads, the more data. I wish I had a foot pedal to go into the loop behind that. And the smarter their machines get. Okay, so time on site. Well, how would you get time on site? The best way to get you to spend time on the site is to addict you to the site. You never want to leave. So let's addict you to the site. How could we possibly addict you to a site? Well, we do it by manipulating cognitive biases, like error patterns in the mind that we all have a propensity to do. So remember those notifications earlier. So some of you may not have all noticed that you're doing it, but many of us, I just remembered that my wife had spent money on my credit card right now. Some of you have thought of that since you looked through your phone. Some of you have thought of the notifications. That was put there. I put that there for you. You didn't choose to think about those things, but you thought about those things. I made you think about those things. Take an example. This is by using cognitive biases. If I say to you the words hot stew, meat, vegetables, mushrooms, and then I give you the word S space P, you think soup. Right. Now if I said wash, clean, shower, bath, you would say soap. This is the availability heuristic. Okay, this is a simple pattern by a guy called Daniel Kahneman created this little quiz. And this is just a simple way to show that you're filling in the gaps, just like we saw earlier with the dinosaur. Okay? Now, if you employed people who really understand this at its absolute depth, and then designed apps for 1 billion people, the impact is big. Very big. So let's think of some of the tricks. I was a former Tinder user. If you use Tinder, do some swipes, leave it. Tomorrow morning, your first swipe, you'll get a match. The first swipe, which is great, because now you're going to spend more time on the site, because, hey, someone likes you. So I'll see if more people like me. A second one could be Uber. When you open Uber, there's so many taxis near you. Now, I'm dubious as to whether those taxis exist, but they're all so close. So I'll definitely get an Uber, because there's like 5 taxis near me, so I'll spend more time on the site. So another one is WhatsApp. Have you sent a message to someone and the ticks have gone blue, but then they've not answered you? And you're like, what's their problem? Like, why are they not answering my messages? It could be for a lot of really important reasons that they've not done that, but you can't help to bear the fact that they've done that. I even know someone who turned off the blue tick thing, and their friends got really annoyed with them, because they were like, why did you turn off the blue tick thing? Like, now I don't know if you've read my messages or not. Snapchat has streaks, so you have to get into a series of streaks with your friend, which is an incredibly addictive mechanism. Some teenagers apparently give their phones to their friends or their login details so that when they're on holidays, they can keep the streaks up. Like, this is totally absurd. Instagram, some people say they drip feed likes throughout the day. So you get 100 likes in the morning, but they send them to you throughout the day. So these are techniques that are just so addictive, because there are these hundreds of biases. There are just so many. Social bias, that was mentioned earlier. I'm likely to say stupid stuff about Brexit because my friends did too. And I'm a monkey as well. Confirmation bias. I'm just looking for people who are gonna agree with me, or who I agree with, and then we'll just enter our little echo chamber. Nostalgia bias. Celebrate your 6 years of friendship with category size bias. Have you noticed the number of green ticks? In fact, let me show you this one. So just before, what I want to say is that the end of this business model goes into addiction. It's the cigarette pack again. So I want to give you some hope, and then I'm going to give some examples. And there are things I think we can do. There are things I think you can do. There are things I think we've got some work to do. And there's some things I think we need to shout about. But I think we can do them all. So now I'll start smiling, like Emily said this morning. Okay, I'm here. So briefly, these are the things we can do, from the macro in the world to the individual you today. The top one is institutional pressure and culture, changing the culture around these machines. Resilient organizations is something I would love to see built more of, and it's happening. And the last one is mindful individuals, that's you. Let me take you through these. So the top one, institutional pressure. So I think there's lots of things we can do to change the laws around this stuff and to change our culture. These are some. I'll take you to transparent labeling first. I think it's interesting. I think that Facebook should say social media causes depression. Let me put that to you. It says smoking kills on cigarette packs, and social media can cause depression. So why should it not say that? We're laughing because it's like, hey, but it's Facebook, it doesn't make me depressed. Doesn't it? It makes a lot of other people depressed. So maybe it should have something, some sort of like, beware that this is a real effect. Maybe it should have an ingredients list. Your drugs have an ingredients list. This drug maybe should too. It contains dopamine. It contains a negativity bias. It contains a social bias. We've added a lot of FOMO into the app. Maybe it should say that in the same way that your drugs say what's in the drug. Let me give you an example. I'm going to sell my book to you now. It's called Tech Monopolies. So you can buy my book, Tech Monopolies. It's £18 it's going to be. I'm launching it next month. And you can get it on paperback or Kindle, same price, right? Or if you want, you can become a subscriber. You pay whatever you want per month. It's just a donation to me. And you can get all this. For the paperback, I'll ask you just to pay for the cost of the printing. But all the rest you get, PDFs, e-publications. I'll give you a guided meditation audio I've created. You'll get some books, all of the ones I've written before and all the ones I'll write in the future. Q&A episodes, and I'll run some video courses. And you can get all this. Now, I hope I've manipulated you well enough here. But I would like to show you the drugs that I put in the package so that you know what you're buying. So the first thing I've done here, if I'm allowed to move forward, first I used an anchoring bias. So you really rely on the first piece of information you were given, so I gave you a high price quick, right? Because then when I told you that you can pay what you want, it was like, oh, that's not very much. It was £18, and now it's whatever I want, so that's really great. Another thing I've put in the product is a category size bias. So on the left, I put 2 green ticks, but on the right, I put about 8. So that's better. Another one I've put in there, can I have a click through to the next slide, please, is I use the noble edge effect. So products of caring companies are seen as superior. And I have a namaste emoji, and therefore I'm very caring. And so hopefully you'll think I'm noble, and you might go and subscribe to me. The next one is I use the speak easy effect. I think Donald Trump used this very well. Words that are easier to say are more trustworthy and valuable. So I didn't use the word donation. I thought of using a Buddhist term called danya, but you'd be like, what's he on about? So I just used pay what you want, which is normal speak, and so you now probably are more likely to think I'm clever, which is great. And there's, I think, one more, which is the transparency effect. So apparently, I've told you, and this won't change the fact that you're more likely to follow the manipulation that I put in place. So that's great, because I've still been honest, and you're still hopefully going to be slightly bent towards doing the thing that I'm trying to get you to do. The good thing about that, seriously, is that maybe it's okay to put the drugs, the ingredient list on the packaging if it's not even going to have a huge effect on stuff. So I think this transparency is, jokes aside, a really important thing. I think it should say what's inside our packages. So there's this idea that Tristan Harris has put forward of an organic tech movement. What the organic movement was for food, maybe we need that for tech. He has a measurement of time well spent. So not time spent on site, but time that you consider is well spent on the site. So you would agree that this was a good use of your time. If we built products like that, it might be more interesting. And there are things you can use. You can use Signal instead of WhatsApp, DuckDuckGo instead of Google. There are all sorts of alternatives. I also think I really need you to click through on the sides, please. I'll just do this every time. I think we need more monopoly regulation. It started to happen, but these companies are just too big. It's just not okay anymore. And I think it should be the same for advertising. I think the advertising business model is at the source of why a lot of this happens, and I think that needs somehow regulating, although I'll admit to not having a specific idea as to why. I think democratic education. I've done a lot of research recently. I went to Costa Rica with my family. My little boy went to a school that was run by the children. And it was just a totally amazing experience. And I think if more of us were brought up in those kind of environments, we would grow up understanding what democracy really means, and we wouldn't let some of this stuff slip so fast. So this is the institutional stuff. What about resilient organizations? I believe there is a type of organization we can build, and I need to go a lot quicker, I've realized, that will make this possible. So let's go into that. I think we can build organizations that are less volatile fundamentally according to these two principles. The first one is distribution. Instead of having a central hierarchy, we distribute information. It makes it a lot more difficult for one ideology to take over the whole system. But if all those people are the same people, if we're all white men, probably the same ideas are going to pop up, which is why we need diversity. Let me show you that. So we need companies that look more like this. I think we also need companies more and more in the future that won't be owned centrally, according to that same principle. And so what I want to show you here is this, is that you can, instead of owning companies that are owned like this, you can have companies that are owned by the worker. To give you a really specific example, can I go to the slide with the Uber app, please? So there is an example in Denver. There's a taxi cooperative owned by the drivers. So instead of loads of drivers working for very little money to make Uber rich, the drivers own the platform. This is a really different definition of freedom inside work than the other way around. And I think it's super important to start designing cooperatives more and more. This is something that existed hundreds of years ago in farms, but I think we need it now. And finally, I think we need companies that are self-managed, managed by the people, not managed through old hierarchical structures, and there's plenty of examples of why. So I just want to rush you through that, because I think there's one thing that we can all do, regardless of building new companies, and that's us as people. How can we behave as people? What can we do about this? Like, do you have a problem? Is my question. Do you have a problem? I think I sometimes have a problem. Do you have a problem? So let's have a think about this. One thing we can do is positive habit formation. There's loads of stuff you can do to simply be a bit less addicted. My phone's on grayscale, and when I turn it on to color, it seems so colorful. If you put it on grayscale, your phone becomes boring again. I recommend you do that. There's other things you can do. One is that you can leave your phone at home when you go for dinner with a friend. You can get a watch so that you don't go to it. You can get an alarm clock so it's not in your bedroom. You can not bring it to dinner. You can turn off the notifications. We need to understand that we are being hacked by these methods, and there's stuff we can do about it. But you need to admit your problem first. And then finally, the one thing we can do is understand our minds. And for that, I want you to all grab your phones again to finish this off. So I want you all to take your phones in front of you, just to hold it in your hand. And look at the phone. I need you to stay quiet, just in your own little world, put the phone in your hand. and just gaze at it, watch it, and check how it feels to look at the phone. You'll notice the color. Now open it, but don't do anything, just open the phone. And just notice your thoughts. You've got apps in front of you or notifications. Your thumb probably is like busting to move. You might already have moved your thumb without me telling you. There's probably an app that is just calling for you. So open the app. Open the one that just called out to you the most. Now ask yourself seriously, why did you choose that app? It had the red notification, thank you. Did you decide to open that app? Like, did you think the best thing for me to do right now is to open that app? Probably not. So now I'd like you to take your phones again, and I want you to turn it off. Off. Turn your phone off, and just notice how it felt turning your phone off. Notice that a lot of you haven't turned your phone off for some time. And then just like, no one can contact you right now. How does that actually feel? So just to very wrap up, because I know I'm over time, I think we need to really consider our addictions here. Can I have the next slide, please? And I think we need to understand that those things are tools. They're made to call people, to book restaurants potentially, but they're not drugs, they're tools. And we can choose whether they're tools or whether they're drugs. So these are the three things I think are important. I want to ask you today to design products for people. I think we can design organizations for people, and we can discuss cultures where we can talk about what's right and what's wrong when we're building products. And if you would like to buy my book, you can pay what you want. You'll notice that over here, I've said you can join the community, and that's because you're more likely to join if I tell you that other people are doing it too. So you're more than welcome to come and join us over there. Thank you.